Hey everyone, if you want to make your own podcast but you don't know where to begin, Spotify for Podcasters makes it super easy. They've got everything in one place, it's totally free, and you can make money while doing it. Here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start doing it today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and pretty much everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also supported, and you can even conduct polls and Q&As. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, the platform is totally free. No catch, totally free. When I wanted to start my own podcast, I did not know where to begin, and I didn't think it was even possible. And Spotify for Podcasters made it happen. They made it easy, they made it quick, and I am doing something that I love. What more can I ask for? So if you're interested in starting your own show, you can do it, and I highly recommend you give this a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Hey everybody, happy Monday. Welcome back to another episode of Everything Kratom, the podcast about anything and everything Kratom. Got a few bits of housekeeping here today before we kick it off this morning. First bit is, got an interesting comment over the weekend that I thought I'd read out loud to you all, or at least part of it. This person says, your first three podcasts are about quote-unquote veins. And then a couple of question marks there. Kratom leaves are not, in all caps, not separated by vein. That's fake. A marketing myth. It's all the same pile of leaves. Red vein is just usually oxidized or fermented powder to make it turn reddish. A green-colored red is just called a red because some people buy reds. Think batches and colors, not strains and veins. So I thought that comment was interesting. Just wanted to share it with you all. I started this podcast because, I don't really have much of a Kratom community that I've been able to find, and I have a hard time finding information about it. So I thought that this would be kind of a good journey for me as well as for anyone else who wanted to listen in. So I really appreciate comments and always want to take those into consideration as I'm learning more about Kratom. And I have heard a lot about different, fake types of Kratom or, skepticism around certain websites when it comes to what they're selling. And that it's really just some of it's lying just to get money. So, I certainly know that's out there. And then I also know that different Kratom types really do affect me very differently. And so I think there's some merit to what this person's saying, and I thought I'd throw it out there. It actually reminds me of how, black tea, green tea, oolong tea, you could make any of those teas out of the same tea leaf. It just depends on the process, which I find interesting, like super fascinating, actually. But it makes sense when you think about it. So all interesting stuff, and I'm always excited to learn more and to take what listeners have to say into account. So thanks for that comment. And the second bit of housekeeping is that we were going to talk about some green varieties of Kratom today, but we're actually going to be pushing that off maybe till tomorrow, because today we have a special guest with us today that is going to be talking about their experience with Kratom. So I'm really excited to have our first conversation here today. So let's welcome him. Tristan, thank you for joining us, and welcome to Everything Kratom.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's great to have you here. And I'm excited to hear about your experiences with Kratom, both in the past or in the present currently. But first, it'd be great to get, just some general background to learn a bit about who you are and where you come from. We'll take it from there. So maybe just to start things off, where are you from in the country?
Sure. I'm from the great state of Texas.
Great state of Texas.
I know, the Lone Star State. Went to college a couple of years back. I'm 22, and my name is Tristan. Hi, everyone.
That's cool. I actually have my whole mom's side is from Texas, so I've been there a few times and have some relatives from there. And then you went to college a few years back. So are you finished with college?
Yeah, I graduated May 2020.
Cool. Heck of a year to graduate. My goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of things were you taking in college? Did you have a specific focus you really enjoyed?
I went into college kind of with the mindset of trying to get a job as soon as possible. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted. I knew I liked money and I liked the stock market. So I decided to go with finance kind of as a safe choice and then see what I really wanted to do when I got a job. So that's the degree I ended up with.
And since you finished college last year, I mean, with the whole pandemic and everything, the whole job market's been completely upended. So it's certainly an abnormal environment to be kind of leaving college and entering the workforce. Did you end up finding anything, or are you kind of in between college and whatever is next?
Kind of in between college and what's next. I have a pretty bad chronic pain, so I'm not able to work at the moment. So it's been a lot of rehabilitation. I had back surgery a couple months after I graduated college. So it's kind of seeing what's next. Might go back to college, might start a job here soon. Not exactly sure yet.
Wow. So, and was that kind of like a condition that's developed over time with your back where you had, or did you have a specific issue that kind of came up?
It wasn't a specific issue. I just started noticing some like sciatic pain, which is where it goes from your back down to your trunk. And then it started just getting worse and worse and worse until surgery was a requirement.
Wow.
So no like real accident started it.
And did the surgery go well, at least?
Somewhat. There were some good points, some bad points. The pain isn't getting any worse, but it didn't really get a whole lot better. So kind of a mixed bag, like a lot of back surgeries end up.
Yeah. So coming out of that, I'm assuming that you kind of were exploring different remedies for pain, or your doctor was prescribing you potentially something. What kind of happened in that department?
Yeah, it was a lot of experimentation with my doctors and trying different medications. Eventually ended up on opioids, which increased a lot. And then most recently, my pain's been really undermanaged. So I used Kratom recreationally in college a couple years back. So I decided to start that again recently. And that's been a big help.
So you used it recreationally beforehand. And was there a specific reason why you decided to stop using it a few years back?
Mostly just the side effects. I enjoyed how it made me feel, but I'm one of the people that gets bad hangovers, which I've never heard of someone else getting. But I don't know if like the serotonin gets really depleted in the brain from me, or I can be pretty sensitive to antidepressants, I've noticed. Kratom has that kind of like antidepressant property. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, maybe. I've heard a little bit about people getting hangovers from it. I personally haven't really experienced that. Maybe once, but I couldn't really tell if it was that or if I was just dehydrated, and it was just as simple as that. But so that's interesting. Do you know what type of or types of kratom you were trying when you were getting those hangovers and you decided to stop using it?
It was with kind of all the strains, but I mainly stick to greens. My favorite was Super Indo, I believe it was called, from a pretty reputable source. So I don't think that was the issue, but
and when you were doing it recreationally, did you know how much you were taking, like a few grams, or did you ever measure it? I know I didn't measure it for a long time anyway, so I wouldn't know if anyone asked me.
It was definitely more than I should have been doing. It was a couple grams a couple times a day, often with maybe a 1 or 2 gram redose, maybe once a day.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So then you stopped taking kratom for a while. Some people say kratom, some people say kratom, and I don't know which one it is. But anyway, sidetrack. So you stopped taking kratom around then, and then you finished college. You have this back surgery, which is a major ordeal, and then you're prescribed some opioids. And you said that was it before you started to try kratom again for the pain that you had these opioids and the prescription kind of went up in level?
That was kind of before the back surgery was when it went up in level. Obviously, right after the back surgery, it went way up and then went down a lot. Went off of opioids onto Suboxone for pain. And then I've recently gotten back onto opioids, but at a much, much lower level than I used to be. So my pain's been really, really high. And my doctor, she said she won't increase it at all. So I felt pretty desperate, and kratom seemed like the best option.
So you decided to try kratom again, and you went with the red variety?
Yeah, I heard that was the best for pain relief.
Yeah. So did you have some specific types of reds that you went for right away, or was it just kind of like whatever, this site or that site had that you knew about?
Well, I had done a lot of research in the past. The first kind I got was whatever the smoke shop had while I waited for my shipment to come in. I had a favorite kratom website, Happy Hippo, and I kind of got what was on sale and what looked good. Some of the strains mentioned like physical rejuvenation, something to that extent. And I thought those were good to go for. Like I tried Red Bali, Red Chocolate Hippo, and another one I don't exactly remember. But I haven't noticed much of a difference between them. It could be maybe I'm taking a little more and it's kind of hard to notice the subtleties between them.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I find that sometimes one type of kratom is completely different from another, and I talk a little bit about the different reds that I've tried in the red episode last week. But I know that other than the few reds that I really have tried a number of times and know about, how it affects my body, I find that sometimes it's harder for me to identify the differences in specifically with red varieties. So that's interesting that you find that. Are you taking about the same amount for the pain that you were taking kind of at a recreational level a few years prior?
Probably about the same amount, except I would say I dose less often. Most days it's twice a day, about 5 to 6 grams. Where earlier it would be like maybe 3 or 4, 2.5, 3 grams, but I would redose after maybe 2-3 hours to continue the effects. And now I just kind of try to ride it. I found it lasts maybe about 6 hours for pain.
Okay, and you're experiencing pretty intense pain. So does it, from a 1 to a 10, how much does it help?
Well, I'd say my pain's at around an 8 out of 10.
Wow.
Without any, on the current low dose opioid I'm on, and then after kratom, it's about maybe around a 4 or a 5.
Wow, so that's a significant help, it sounds like. Cuts it in half.
Yeah, it's really been a big lifesaver. I don't know what I would do these past couple of weeks without it.
Wow. And So, and your doctor doesn't want to prescribe you a higher level of the opioids that you're taking. Like in an ideal scenario, would you rather have a higher level of the opioids and not use the Kratom, or are you kind of happy with this combination?
I'd say like in an ideal world, Kratom would be like a tolerance break from real opioids. Longer term, I'd rather be on it, but just the side effects and the hangover for me is really bad. So my plan is to switch doctors and hopefully increase the dosage and maybe alternate days, or 1 month take Kratom, 1 month take pills, kind of see how it works out. I'm not sure yet exactly. I'm pretty new to Kratom again. This is about week 2.
Wow, yeah, that's really new. Well, it's really interesting to hear about how you've been managing your pain with it, and in conjunction with the opioids. And I know a lot of things that I see on the internet or comments from people when it comes to opioids is like someone's addicted to opioids and then they're using Kratom to not use opioids. But I haven't really seen much material or many comments from people talking about how they use it in conjunction with each other, specifically for pain management. So it's really interesting to hear about your experience with that. And so do you have any other friends, or do you know of any other people in your area or your personal circle that knew about Kratom or uses it themselves?
My best friend and roommate actually introduced me to Kratom. And a couple of my other friends used it, but they stopped. And he's been continuously using it for a couple of years now. From my understanding, pretty much daily at kind of lower dosages for anxiety and like energy, and just to feel a little better.
Oh, I see. Do you find that you get the same sort of, so it sounds like you kind of do get the same sort of hangovers from time to time with the past couple weeks. Have you been experiencing that?
Yeah, the hangovers are pretty constant when I wake up. If I wait to take Kratom, I can definitely feel it. Sometimes I wait to try to kind of wait out the pain a little bit. It's only about 6 hours. So I try to kind of time it so that when I'm most active is when the Kratom is working the strongest.
Mm-hmm. So you've been using these red varieties for the past couple weeks. Have you found the effects to wane over that time? Do you have to take more of it since you did when you started 2 weeks ago?
A little bit more. Before I was taking maybe so sorry, my dad walked in. 4.5 to 5 grams. And then now it's more like 5.5. I started off at a lower dosage, but just noticed it was too stimulating for me.
And this is still with the red. It was too stimulating at a lower dosage. That's interesting. And kind of switching gears here, looking at have you been following at all this potential regulation or scheduling of Kratom from the FDA at all?
I have. Are you talking about the 2017, I believe it was, or the new WHO one?
So you've kind of been following both. I was thinking of the more recent WHO one, but the 2017 or 16 one, yeah, that was something else as well.
Happy it didn't happen, at least.
My goodness, yeah. I mean, I think that was the only time where, was it the DEA, I think, that the emergency ban that they had set up, that is the first time they've ever repealed an emergency ban before it took place. Really interesting. Just so many people.
Kind of amazing. The Kratom advocates definitely won that day.
Yeah, and that's kind of when I realized it was a bit of a bigger thing than I thought, because up until then I knew about a handful of people personally who used it. I never did extensive research up to that point, but I didn't really have any sort of like online Kratom community or anything. So when that happened, I was just amazed when this New York Times article comes out and it shows, like military service members and doctors and lawyers and college people and janitors and all walks of life coming forward and saying, no, you can't get rid of this. It's pretty amazing.
It's such a useful medication, and prohibition never works.
Yeah, so that's kind of answering my next question, which is what you kind of think about it. It seems like you're not in favor of any sort of like real restriction on it.
Yeah, for the most part. I do wish there was like a kratom pill, kind of like how you have a hydrocodone pill, something that maybe isolated the alkaloids in it. Because kratom has so many different effects. Sometimes one person might only want one effect or another effect out of it, but I know that can be really hard to do and would probably drive the cost up, and no big pharma company would probably invest in it.
So that's interesting. So you're talking about actually isolating certain properties within certain types of kratom that do certain things, but not even just like, the main thing that acts on your receptors that make you feel the general buzz that is kratom.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I don't know if that could actually happen one day. Probably not, but one can dream.
Well, that's really interesting. I love hearing about your experience with this, and I'm hoping that your pain gets better. And one other question I have before we kind of wind things down here is what are the laws in Texas? Are there any restrictions on kratom in Texas?
I don't believe so. The only thing I can think of is at the local smoke shop, they would ID to make sure you were above 18. And I think in some shops they say 21, but I was always above that age, so I never really wondered about that. It's pretty easy to buy online as well. I don't even think they check IDs like they do with like vaporizers nowadays and e-cigarettes. So it's pretty free here, I think.
And, I completely spaced out and forgot to ask you, how is it that you take kratom? Do you take it as a tea, or do you just kind of like toss it and wash it, or how do you take it?
Is the toss and wash where you mix it with water?
I always heard the toss and wash is like you have some in your hand, you literally toss it in your mouth, and then you take a swig of water.
I tried that once and almost choked. It was it made me gag and never again. And that was like 2 grams. No, I usually just mix it with water. I've heard tea is a little stronger and better. I've been wanting to try that. I just need to buy some lemons for it.
Yeah, lemons definitely can help. That and honey, and totally. Yeah. Well, I've definitely been in the situation where I it's funny. Sometimes I have to travel for work, and one time I was in a hotel room and I had to leave the hotel to go to a meeting, and my coworker was coming over to like stop by, and we were going to walk there together, and I thought I had a few minutes, so I did a toss and wash, and some of it got stuck in the back of my throat, and I started choking and like coughing everywhere, and then they knocked on my door. And I had to go. So I was a complete mess, and it was like, oh my God, this is terrible. I had to wash my face real quick so I don't have all this weird green powder all over my face. But anyway, that's a story for another time. Well, Tristan, thanks so much for taking the time to join on. This is the first actual conversation we have on this show, so it's awesome to have you, and really interesting to hear about your experience. So thanks for sharing.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Jamie.
Great. And to all you out there, we'll be coming back tomorrow with another episode. We'll likely be taking a look at some green varieties. So until then, take care and have a good Monday. Bye-bye.